All right, this is George Hall here with the Talking Tone podcast, and this week we've got Marcus Praestgaard. He's 19, and he's worked with people such as Hamish Stewart, Dana Gillespie, and he regularly plays at Ronnie Scott's. Did I get all that right, Marcus?
Yeah, that's great.
Cool. So we met like a few months ago at a Tom Waters gig that we played together.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And yeah, I was blown away by you guys. You were all like, the whole band were cooking. You're all really great at what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So when did you guys all like meet, and how did you start playing together?
So I met Tom probably about 6 years ago now. Yeah, we just met at a gig. It was his dad's gig, actually, Ben Waters, who you're probably familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was it was at this village hall that I was playing at, and the owner is a friend of ours and my mum's, and he would get me up with all the different bands who'd come by. And so yeah, it just happened to be his dad, and then Tom was on the gig as well. And yeah, it just all started from there. And then over the years we played together, and then over lockdown, then we started like recording and doing some things together. And then yeah, once COVID sort of became a bit less restricted, then yeah, we started playing together, doing shows and things. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad I asked that, because I think I assumed wrong, because I just assumed that you guys had played together through being kids, but it's more of a recent thing over the past sort of 6 years or so. That you guys got together. Cool. So what age did you pick up the guitar, and how did it sort of get put into your hands? Have you got like a musical family or anything?
I started playing at age 8, I think. Yeah, I was 8 years old. So my parents don't play any instruments. I think if you trace my family further back, there's some musicians there, but I didn't know them. But for me, it was my mum's love of music that really pushed me forward into this world. So for example, when I was really young, about 3 years old, I used to go to the local blues festival, and I'd sit by the speaker and just absorb what was going on, I guess. So it just all started from there, and then we had family friends who were guitar players, and I got to learn a few things from them, and then started, I got the bug eventually around the age of 11 or 12, and then I just non-stop from there.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting. So the family friends and the guitar players that you knew back then, were you like receiving any formal lessons, or was it more sort of self-taught with little bits from them?
Yeah, so I had probably a year of lessons with one of our friends, and I just learned the basics, open chords, pentatonic scale, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then from then on, it was mostly self-taught. I've had a few lessons with different people. I had a few lessons in school. I had a few lessons from a really cool player, a guy called Nat Martin, who you might be familiar with. He taught at ACM.
I don't know Nat, but I studied at ACM for about a year when I was 18, and I remember him being there.
Yeah, and that's basically it. And then I was self-taught from there. And yeah, just learning from people I play with nowadays.
Yeah, interesting. Like for me, I was 11 years old when I first got a guitar. Received some lessons from my granddad, who could play a little bit, and and I learnt the basic sort of open chords, and then that was it. Then couldn't really do much more than that. I could do some bar chords as well, up until about the age of 16, I think 17, and I was just leaving school, and I just didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. And my mum said, "Well, why don't you join Weymouth College and study music?" And I was like, "Okay," because I was either I was actually dead set on joining the army. Funnily enough, I just had it in my head that's what I wanted to do, and so I didn't. I got into college, and we had like this little showcase in the first week, and I remember one of the people, they were like, "Oh yeah, George, you play the guitar solo," and I was like, "What? A guitar solo? Like I can just play like, you know, some bar chords and some open chords, you know." And this older kid at the college said, "Yeah, here's a scale," and he just taught me like the first position of the minor pentatonic, and my solo was just going down the scale and then back up, and that was it.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was, yeah, I was just 17, I think. So I was relatively like late to playing guitar. I sort of, but I've got similarities to you in that I haven't really had a lot of formal sort of guitar lessons, even though I did study at ACM and stuff for a year.
Yeah.
So like for me, like things like transcribing and stuff has never been like a massive part of my playing, but I feel like when I listen to you, I feel like you've put like quite a lot of time into that kind of thing. Is that right? Like you've spent quite a bit of time transcribing.
Definitely. Yeah. Transcribing is probably the thing I put the most amount of effort into in regards to practice.
Yeah. Nice.
So,
And what's your approach to that then? Do you just sort of like mine for things that you like the sound of, or do you like work on standards, or how do you approach it all?
yeah, so just it's very simple. It's just if I hear something I like, you know, and I want to play it, then I'll just get the audio file, or you know, if it's a YouTube video, most of the time, then I'll just, sometimes you have to slow it down. There's like a slow down feature on YouTube, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just work it out by ear. Sometimes slow it down, and I mean, there's a famous phrase that I might get this wrong, but from my understanding is, oh God, I'm going to get this wrong. Oh yeah, okay. Imitate, assimilate, and innovate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, actually, I'm probably going to mess this up, but so imitating being copying what someone else is playing, and then the assimilation, I think, is then the understanding of that. I might have got that wrong, but I can't remember what that word exactly means. And then the innovate being taking that information and then using it to create your own unique thing from that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I think about with transcribing is, you know, it's like learning a language. Like when we're babies, we hear our parents speaking the native tongue, and then just naturally we begin to transcribe that. And so I kind of think of it in the same way with music, where we need to learn the language which we're playing, and I think transcription's the best, one of the best ways.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I guess when I say I haven't really transcribed stuff a lot, I think what I really mean is when I say that it's like sitting and learning whole solos. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess I can relate to that a lot, in the sense that if I like the sound of something, I will get, you know, I'll gravitate towards that, and then I'll just go, I like that. And then the phrase that you said about, you know, assimilating that information and then innovating it once you've sort of digested it, That's so important, and that's something that I teach my students now. And it's, if you get something, try and turn it into 3 or 4 things from that one phrase that you've picked up. Yeah, cool. So
yeah, it's seeing the underlying concepts behind it, right? That's the power in it.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, definitely. So what's your approach to improvisation generally? Because when I hear you play, I can hear quite a lot of different influences in you playing. What sort of things come to mind, like when you think about? Because I know there must have been so many players that you're influenced by in music. What are the sort of things that come up in your head when you think about like what makes Marcus tick the way that you do? And that's probably a difficult question to answer in one.
Yeah. So for me, my background is blues music. That's what I grew up with. So that's always kind of been the bedrock of my understanding of music. So I'd have to start with, the names you'd expect: B.B. King, Albert King, Freddie King, Albert Collins, all those guys, Jimmy Vaughan, Gatemouth Brown, R.L. Burnside. Yeah, loads of blues guys. And then, I just slowly gravitated into jazz as well. I see jazz and blues as very similar forms of music. I think jazz is from blues. So it felt very natural just to... Sorry, I'm kind of blocked up.
That's all right.
It felt very natural to, just go to move towards that kind of music. So I remember the first thing that sparked my interest when it comes to jazz was Django Reinhardt.
Right.
I remember learning the minor swing solo and everything, and swing 42 tunes like that. And that was a big gateway for me, the gateway drug.
Sure. Yeah,
and, So from there, and then I got into guys like Wes Montgomery, Kenny Burrell, Grant Green. Grant Green's a huge influence for me.
Yeah.
And then horn players
Love
from
it.
there. Horn players, saxophonists, trumpet players, Freddie Hubbard, people like that. And that's kind of who I'm into right now. Those guys.
Yeah.
And then a lot of piano players as well. Keith Jarrett. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, all those players that you've mentioned have, like, they've all influenced me in a way, like everyone that you were saying. And what's interesting is like the blues players that you mentioned, the way that all of those players just can deliver just a few notes in their own real unique way, and really just try and say something with just a few notes. That to me is so important, because it's like music is just this. It's an art form where you're playing something and someone's connecting to it, and for me, there's nobody like that does that quite as well as like BB King or Albert King or Freddie King. These guys are just playing a few notes and they just hit you right here. At least that's how I feel. And hearing you talk about like your transition into jazz, like all the players you mentioned, they do that as well, but with more of a complex vocabulary, I suppose.
Yeah. No, but you're 100% right. I mean, that's what I love about those guys. They connect on a deeper level than just the surface level. It's like it's a spiritual thing. It's hard to explain, but those guys really do have an impact on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. So, like, how did you? Because I've never really, and I suppose anybody that listens to this would be interested as well, because I've not spent a lot of time like learning jazz stuff as per se. It's always been a byproduct of stuff that I'm having to learn for bands or just wanting me to sort of extend my own vocabulary, but without the interest to like transcribe anything as per se. Are there any like good solos or anything like that you gravitate towards when you first start transcribing? Is there anything that you'd recommend? I know you mentioned like the minor swing solo. Is there any other like bits that you picked up early on?
Yeah, in terms of Wes Montgomery, the first album that I heard that really sparked an interest was Full House.
Okay.
Which is an amazing record. And then also Live at the Half Note is a big one.
Right.
And then obviously there's, boss guitar, things like that.
Okay.
I can't remember if I got the name of that quite right. What is it? Yeah, it's boss guitar. Yeah, I always get mixed up because there's also the incredible. What is it? The incredible jazz guitar. Yeah, the incredible jazz guitar of Wes Montgomery as well, which is an amazing record.
Right.
Yeah, and then for Grant Green, for me, it was more particular tunes. So there's a recording of Just Friends, which is a really great solo on that, which is a lovely standard. And then also on a blues form, there's a tune called Miss Anne's Tempo.
Okay.
Which is a great solo as well.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. But those are just ones that I think about that really, really changed the way I thought about music.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, what I think Wes Montgomery and Grant Green's playing, especially Grant Green, I would say he has quite a strong blues connection, doesn't he? I find like Grant Green's playing is well, any of the people that you've mentioned, I think they're really accessible jazz guitar players in the sense that they're not playing like really, and all of them can and did play some crazy stuff, but it was all quite lyrical, wasn't it? And
yeah,
none of it was lost in sort of like intense bebop land.
No, not so much with those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. Cool. So what like so you've mentioned like non-guitar influences. And well, in fact, scrap that question, Marcus. Don't worry about that one. So like recently I've seen you playing slide quite a bit. And it's sounding great, like your
Thanks.
approach to it, and I can hear like it's like a mixture of all of the stuff that's preceded it for you, I suppose, the blues stuff, the jazz stuff, and it's all being tied up to playing with the slide.
Yeah.
Like, how have you sort of like got that going?
I think playing slide just came out of a necessity, really, because I was playing some gigs and I just found people asking me to play slide on some things, and it was one of those things where, like, at the start I knew I sucked, but I had to do it, and it was like, okay, let's just make sure we don't suck as much as we need to, just suck a bit less. So I sort of just got. Oh, just something I learned on the gig, really. Just it was never like an intentional thing. I really practiced a lot. It was just like, yeah, I'm doing this on the gig.
Yeah,
I'm doing this on the gig, so I better start getting a bit better at it. And then just gradually over time, I just I just started hearing things that that I quite like the sound of, and I thought that I wasn't hearing other people do as much.
Mm.
And so for me, it's just this thing of like, I mean, I had this idea for a while, was just basically just playing bebop on slide and trying to sound like a horn player on slide. That's been something that I've been thinking about. But then there's also like the Derek Trucks and of the world, and Dwayne Allmans, who are big influences. But I didn't want to sound exactly like them, because everybody does that already. So yeah, I've just been on this sort of this path with it. There's no real there's not too much thought into it, which is quite nice. It's just seeing where it takes me. But yeah, at the minute, it's just kind of trying to do the bebop thing with it, and yeah, see where it goes.
Yeah, well, I can hear that. I can hear that's what you're doing, and yeah, I love it. It's fresh. It's something that sounds unique to you, from what I've heard you doing. Like I've recently started, and when I haven't just recently started, I've picked it back up because, like, just like you, I've joined a band where I'm having to play slide, and it's funny actually. It's scary how similar it is, because I've joined a band, and the guy that was recording all the music for the band was Robbie McIntosh. So there's quite a bit of slide parts.
Great.
Yeah.
He's amazing. He's one of my heroes, Robbie Mac.
Oh yeah, I love him. I actually saw him play last night at a little pub up in Westbourne. That's why I'm a bit knackered today.
I think that's amazing. I love his way of life. You know, like he does these massive gigs with Paul McCartney and people like that, and then he's still connected to the. He's still how do I phrase that? He's still like humble. He's still with his roots. He'll just play to a pub in front of 5 people, and it's great. And I think that's how it should be.
For sure. Yeah, right. He is like that, and
he's for the music.
Yeah, 100%. It comes across. I played a gig with him not a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago now, and we were just playing in a little pub, and well, I won't divulge too much about what's going on with Robbie, but he was just getting over something, and he was getting out and playing, and yeah, he's just an inspiration. And when I saw him play last night, he's just got that much better again recently, where he's back on form and he's sounding great. It was really inspiring. So, but yeah, anyway, kind of with the slide thing, I found just initially, like, just trying to get the thing to sound in tune and to get it to get a vibrato going with the slide. It's not a nice experience in the beginning, is it? You're kind of just well, at least it wasn't for me.
No, I know. I think it was kind of. It's always a battle, It's always a battle. Like, for me, recently it's just been trying to do it without looking, because you can get so reliant on looking at where the frets are. So I think trying to just use your ear is the ultimate goal. But it's real challenging trying to integrate it.
Yeah. Now that's a really good point, actually. I find like I can be a little bit too visual with it. Because it's very much an ear thing. I've heard like Derek Truck speak about that before, and he's just like talking about just playing slide is essentially like approaching it like a fretless instrument. So you're kind of just relying on your ear. Cool, man. So, like, what are you doing at the moment? Because I know you've mentioned, a few artists that you've worked with, and I've seen you play with Tom. I've seen you play with a guy called Artie. Is his name?
Yeah, Artie Zeitz. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a wicked organist, B3 organ, and an amazing guitar player as well.
Yeah. I saw I depressingly saw a video of him playing guitar on Instagram after we did our gig together, and I was like, "What? This guy, this guy plays organ and guitar like that? That's insane." No, that's really cool. So, are they the guys that you're mainly playing with at the moment?
Yeah, I'm playing a lot of Artie at the moment, which I'm very grateful for. Yeah, just playing, blues, jazz. We did a few late shows last week at Ronnie's, which was fun. Yeah, just those kind of things. I'm really fortunate that I'm just playing with my friends at the minute, and that seems to be working. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that because when I saw you guys playing together, like I can see that you're all like good friends. Like you don't always see that with bands. Sometimes you can kind of see that they're all there doing a bit of a job and they're just kind of.
Yeah.
But I can see that. What was interesting, like when I got up to jam with you guys, and I was like, it felt like I could tell you all had like your own language, like you were all talking with each other like the whole time and like kind of like passing the ball to each other. And I just sort of like came in on this sort of conversation and was like just trying to grab the ball and then it was a cool experience. So did you am I right in thinking like does Tom study it is it the Royal Academy of Music or something like that? And do you study there, or have I got that totally wrong?
Yes, so Tom finished studying there this year, and yeah, I didn't go to any of those kind of places.
Okay.
But I'm a student of life.
Yeah,
that sounds very cringeworthy to say, but
no,
but yeah,
not at all.
but I'm just I'm just learning from gigs and playing with people. Yeah, that's my kind of university, I guess.
Yeah, right. As long as you don't, you're not one of those 50-year-old guys that puts University of Life on their Facebook.
No, exactly. That's exactly where I've got it from. That's why
yeah,
I
exactly.
cringe at myself saying that because I remember seeing someone put that on Facebook years ago. Yeah. No, I definitely won't do that. I definitely won't. I promise.
No, no, it's all good. But having gone through like the music education system for a little while, I do feel like it was quite necessary for me in the sense that like I needed a bit of structure and a bit of like because I started relatively late, so I needed something to sort of get me sort of going with it all. But by the sounds of it, like that's definitely not harming you in any way, and you're already like well connected and playing with people that are good. So that's the only thing that I think the university type of situation can be really useful for is just getting connections. But
definitely,
you've definitely already got that going. So like the podcast is called Talkin Tone, and I'm not a massive gearhead, but yeah, like I've got a few nice pieces of gear, and I kind of I'm grateful that I've got them. And I change bits out occasionally, but I'm not like constantly looking for things. But I am curious to find out like what it is that you do use, or is there anything that you gravitate towards playing with in terms of guitars and amps and pedals and stuff?
Yeah, so I've got 3 guitars that I use, but one guitar I basically use all the time, and then occasionally the other 2. But I've got a Gibson ES335, which was left to me by a great friend who passed away, and so that guitar is just my, that's the one for me, and I rarely deviate from that, to be honest. So
Yeah.
basically, I could do everything on that one guitar, and then yeah, I've got a Telecaster there. You can actually see him behind me. That's
Oh yeah, cool.
that's the Gibson there.
Yeah.
And then I've got a 59 Harmony back there, which is cool, but it's so unpredictable and doesn't work half the time. So that's more of a home guitar.
So that's the one that you're playing slide on in the clips.
Oh, on the Instagram thingy, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. It's good for that. It's good for that.
Is it? Sorry, go on.
I was just saying it sounds amazing when it works, but yeah, it's kind of annoying sometimes.
Bit temperamental.
Yeah.
Is it set up for slide then, or is it just sort of a regular sort of setup on it?
Well, I always play with a high action, just for normal guitar anyway. So it's kind of all my guitars are set up for slides.
Right.
Just because I like high action and.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it's never been a big change, needed to play setup wise. And then I've got a telly that I bought recently, which is cool. It's got like a Gretsch bridge pickup in it.
Right.
It's got no neck pickup, but I think I want to get one put in. But yeah, that's basically it. Sorry, I'm a bit under the weather today. I don't know how I've managed that
mate.
In the middle of summer. But.
Yeah, that's all right, mate. I'm knackered today. I'm not firing on all cylinders myself. It's all good. So yeah, you got like 3 guitars. What about like amps? Are there any amps that you regularly use or gravitate towards?
Yeah, I've got a Fender Pro Junior, which I use a lot. Just like it's not an expensive amp at all. But it's nice for little gigs around London. And now that I'm living in London, so you can't have a huge amp and take it around. It's just not practical on the bus or on the tube. So I just need a little amp, and then half the time there's an amp at gigs, so you kind of just have to do what you're given.
Yeah, right.
And there's something quite nice about that, in letting go of the control of all the variables and just making the best out of what you have, given to you on that given night. I mean, it's nice because it lets you just think about the music and the playing itself more rather than obsessing over the gear as much.
Sure. Well, ultimately, like no matter what you're playing through, I mean, there are obviously exceptions, but for the most part, it's going to be you, isn't it? Like that's coming through it. So it's, I've done gigs where I've played with like no pedals, just straight into an amp and just turned it up. And I've played gigs where I've been, playing through a pedal board and whatever. And I've always like had comments that it just sort of, it sounds like me no matter what I'm playing, for the most part, because that's essentially what's coming through, isn't it? It's just about, not getting on with it, but not letting something like an amp get in the way too much of your performance,
Yeah, I think they're just tools, I really see it the same way as I guess like a carpenter would with a saw. For me, it's purely just a tool to help me do what I do. And so finding, I just like pieces of gear that don't get in the way, and they don't put forward or suggest a sound. Like for example, that's why I don't usually connect with Stratocasters, because I just find that they force a sound onto you too much. Maybe that's just because of the people who played them, and it's so iconic. And but I have played some where I don't get the same feeling. Yeah.
No, I get you. I mean, I'm predominantly a Strat player, but it can't help but inform your playing in some way. And it's very. I remember there was a time period years ago where I, like many other Strat players, would I was starting to get a little bit too Stevie Ray Vaughan type of thing, and that for me it's a big no. I love Stevie, but I don't ever want to. There's a certain lick, and it's like if I hear it being played, it's just I can't go there. And I remember at one point I started doing that kind of thing, and I was like, George, that's the wrong direction for you. You know,
Right.
there's thousands and thousands of other people that are going down that same route.
Yeah, and I get it because it sounds great.
Yeah,
But I think it's just being honest with yourself in what you like, and I mean, if that's the thing that you really love, then I think it's good to do that. But it's
yeah, for sure.
as long as it's honest.
Yeah, right. No, that is a great point. Yeah, as long as you're being true to yourself. And actually, yeah, I will put a disclaimer in there. I am absolutely not saying there's anything wrong with sounding like Stevie Ray Vaughan if that's what you want to do. It just wasn't for me at the time. Yeah. So, what about pedals? Like I know you got a pretty small pedal board, like me, I should imagine, because I saw on the gig you got quite a similar set of stuff on the floor to me in a way, but slightly different stuff.
Yeah, I'm really not fussy, man. I just need a reverb pedal. So I like the Flint, the Strymon Flint one.
Yeah.
And then that's basically it, really. That's all I need. I've a tuner as well, and then there's one pedal I quite like. Called, I don't know what it is, but it's called the Tube Factor by Hughes and Kettner.
Right.
It's the only overdrive pedal I actually really like. It's a tube overdrive, and yeah, it's really cool because it doesn't compress the sound in the same way that all the transistor ones seem to do.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even like I bought this. There's the one I got on my little board thing. There's this one called the January.
Yeah.
It's like a really expensive overdrive pedal. It's like 300 quid or something.
Yeah.
But it still does the same thing that all of them do, where it just like squeezes the sound and makes it smaller, and it messes with the mid range. It makes it all mid boosty, you know. And they always say like, what's the phrase? Transparent.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not true. But the Tube Factor one that I like, that seems to be the only one that sort of actually does that. Doesn't mess with the sound too much.
Right. That's interesting. It's got to be something to do with the tubes then. That's like that sort of acting in that way where it's like an organic piece of gear as opposed to transistor, like you said.
Yeah, it does. I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm clueless, but it does seem to be the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I find myself as I'm getting older and sort of my sound changes a bit as time goes on. Like I think earlier on in my playing, I gravitated towards more compression and more gain because I associated more of that stuff with sustain and and it. But now I'm sort of going the other way, and I'm more interested in hearing the guitar, and more of the amp, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm still turned on by fuzz sounds and that kind of thing, and that stuff is obviously its own little world.
Yeah.
As well. So, like, with all your gear, then do you have any? We will get off the subject of gear in a minute, Marcus, I promise. But you got to get a little bit of it.
Yeah, you got to get. So you get the clicks.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, get all 10 views. No, with like do you have any like approach to like setting an amp? Let's just say you go to a gig, you're playing at Ronnie's, it's a backline amp, some sort of Fender amp or whatever. Is there anything that you do? Do you just listen to what you're hearing, or is there a certain sort of thing that you gravitate towards doing?
Yeah, so sometimes I'll just find usually there's like a normal kind of area, right? I mean, I'd never put the bass up too high. So it just always seems to be way too much.
Yeah,
especially when you're playing with people. You don't want to get in the way of people.
sure.
And so I always leave the bass low, and then the rest of it's just to taste.
Sure.
Yeah, it really just depends on the amp. I mean, there's a thing I heard from Matt Schofield,
Yeah.
which is where like he'll twist the pots and then find the point at which there's the most variance in where you turn it, so where it's most reactive. And so that's something I've done before. And like you find that sweet spot where like the tone changes a ton just by twisting it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's just a case by case basis, really.
Yeah, right. That's actually, it's interesting you mentioned the Matt Schofield thing, because that when I found out about that helped,
Right.
shape my sort of approach to it all.
Yeah.
I'm not strict with it, but it definitely does help, the sort of thing where you're finding the point in the pot where it's kind of doing something.
Yeah.
Cool. Like, so, have you got any projects or anything that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah. I've been writing my own music recently. I've done a few shows now, playing some of that, which has been great. And yeah, just continuing with that, developing those ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in terms of my own stuff. That's the main thing. Just,
Yeah.
that I want to release some music at some point in the nearish future.
Yeah.
But at the moment I'm just learning so much, just playing with people. I've just got a lot to learn from. So that's the main focus really, is just developing my skills.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're at that age where you're still doing that, aren't you? I mean, I know that you're a fantastic guitar player and improviser, but there's still a lot of years ahead where you're going to develop as an artist and as a person, and all of that stuff.
I hope it never stops. I
I
think
can, yeah,
that's what the greats do. They never stopped evolving. If you look at people like Miles Davis, I mean, it's unbelievable how he was at the epicenter of music from for 5 different decades, from the 40s, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. It's unbelievable.
yeah.
And people like that are people I look up to, and something I think about is like the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if you've heard about that, but it's the idea of like the more you know, the less you realize you know, and that's been so true for me. It's like the more knowledge I've gained, the more I realize I know nothing, and so that's kind of my mindset.
Absolutely. I couldn't identify more with you. I remember there was a time, I think I was about 23 when I first moved to London, and I thought like I really knew what I was doing. I thought I was pretty good, and I I got there, and like I was exposed to the wider world, I suppose. And I was kind of young and naive, really, and it's only as time has gone on that and I will actually say, like, I think any ego that I had back then was pretty sort of built on not on a solid foundation. It came from somewhere else, I think. But I quit, like, as time's gone on, I've found like even though I've improved as a player and a musician, I find like I feel like I know less. Like I hear people play, and I'm like, I never like get what's the word? I never really feel competitive or anything like that. I just feel inspired and feel more like, wow, there's so much more to know. And when I'm playing, I'm like, sometimes I get fucking bored of my own playing, to be frank. I'll be playing, I'm like, I'm playing the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the longer I've been playing, the more that it takes to be able to get out of that and reach a new level. And there's so many variables. I mean, I can't put my finger on one thing. I mean, it's never just the same sort of thing. It's always something different. It could be like a couple of years ago, I went and did a cruise ship gig for 6 months, and
wow,
I got fucking chucked in on the deep end of this gig, and was like, my reading was pretty much non-existent. I could barely read through like a chart properly, and I was playing like on quite a big cruise ship with quite a high standard, and I randomly got this gig from someone who I played with years and years ago, and it was like sink or swim, and I was like, right, I've and luckily, I put a bit of work in, and it ended up going really well, in terms of how it all went. But that sort of stuff just ups your game. You're like, shit. I've got to play 400 songs a week from every kind of genre, and then like play with these guest entertainers that are doing all this sort of like swing and jazz stuff. It was cool, but it was a bit of a burn, to be honest.
You need moments like that. I think those are the things when you get thrown in the deep end. Those are the things that really develop you as a musician and a human being.
Right. Yeah.
I think
absolutely.
they're really valuable.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you already mentioned it a minute ago about sort of like playing with people that are more experienced than you, and how
but
that.
That's the best thing. I mean, just playing with people who are better than you, which is something I've been fortunate enough to do a lot recently. And it's just, I mean, that's the most valuable thing I think there is. It's just absorbing information
for sure
from people who have the wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I look forward to hearing how like your career develops over the next few years. I'm sure it's going to be like, you're going to have some good things going, man, because you're in the right place, and you're playing with some good people, and you're sounding great. So
I appreciate it. Thanks.
No, you're welcome. All right, I've got a few corny questions, quick fire questions for you before we wrap things up. So bear with me. If you could be transported to any time period and place, and be playing music in that scene, would there be anywhere that you would go?
It'd be either, I think, two things. I would have liked to have been around on the scene in like the late 60s, like when the Allman Brothers were starting out. I would have loved that. I would have loved to be a part of that in some way. That would be amazing. Maybe when the Beatles were starting out in Liverpool as well. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Or actually, even my favorite Beatles is the later stuff. So from sort of Rubber Soul, Revolver onwards. So being around then would be amazing.
Right. Okay. So we could safely say late 60s, either side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Nice.
obviously, it'd be amazing being in New York in the 50s, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that I think that would be pretty similar for me. I think late 60s and 50s for sure. Okay, all right. If you could form a super band, um, any musician from any era, and we'll say guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and then you could either have like keys or a horn player or another guitarist in the fifth spot.
Right. Wow, that's heavy. That's a real heavy question. I have to really put some thought into this, because I'm gonna like think about this later on today and regret
Yeah.
not including someone.
Right. Yeah.
Gosh. That's really hard.
It can be. I think. Like I know that it's hard to get definitive, but is there anybody like that just gravitates to your mind pretty quickly?
Yeah. I mean, the first name that I thought of was Art Blakey on drums.
Right.
That was the first thing I was thinking, or maybe Elvin Jones, maybe.
Right.
Who would I have on bass? Gosh. Maybe Ron Carter.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
And
choice.
then, who else have I got?
You've done bass and drums so far. So we've got guitar, vocals, and then the fifth spot can be any
on
instrument.
guitar. Oh my god, guitar. Well, that's so challenging.
I suppose if I could help you out a little bit, like I'm thinking about the two guys that you put together, Art Blakely, Ron Carter. Like who's going to fit in well with those guys?
John Lennon on guitar.
John
Lennon on guitar and vocals.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Or maybe Paul McCartney on bass.
Right. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And then
what about Yoko just screaming?
No. Get out, Yoko. Get out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then maybe like Wayne on sax.
Wayne Shorter.
Yeah, Wayne Shorter. Or who else? Cannonball, maybe. Cannonball Adderley.
Okay. Right. I think like.
What do you say?
I was going to say, I think that I'm going to ask this question of a few more people, but that's probably going to be one of the most eclectic mixes of people. If that's John Lennon with, I suppose you went for Paul McCartney in the end. So
I don't know. It's kind of hard. No. You know what I'll say? I'll say John Lennon, and then Ron Carter, Art Blakey, Wayne, and on keys, right? Keys last.
Yeah, do keys.
Keith Jarrett on keys, or probably Keith Jarrett. Yeah.
I'd be really interested to hear, like, if John was like, I'm not going to do the John Lennon impression because I can't, but he comes to the band and he's got his song and he's like, all right, guys, this is how it goes, and it's like, he's like,
well, that's the thing is we'd be playing Beatles tunes. That's the thing.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I could imagine like Keith Jarrett doing something really interesting with like Imagine or something. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's such a deep question. It's like, but that's just what's on my mind right now. Could be
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think it could change any given moment. I mean, I would
Yeah.
struggle to pick, but I think it's always interesting. All right, one more for you, Marcus, before we finish up. And you're already, you're young anyway at 19. But if you could give one piece of advice to younger musicians just starting out, is there anything that you've got from your experience so far that you think would have helped people?
I would say stay open-minded as much as possible, and I'd say just play what you love. Whatever you gravitate towards, just focus on that.
Yeah.
I think you've got to be playing music that you're passionate about and you love. Otherwise, I think that's the only way to become great. Is you truly have to be kind of obsessed with it. And so I think, especially for people starting out, I think so many people stop playing because they're sort of forced down this direction that they never really were in love with in the first place. So I think you really have to really love what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I'd just say just focus on what feels right, for you.
Yeah, great advice. Yeah, you've got to love it, haven't you? You've got to be engaged with what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on and chatting with me.
That's a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Is there anywhere that we can see you playing over the next few weeks? I know you've mentioned like Ronnie's. Are you there on a semi-regular basis or a regular basis?
Well, I think that the thing is, right, nothing's guaranteed right now. I'm
okay.
It's funny for me. I mean, it's the same with a lot of my friends at the moment. Like, I don't have anything booked in the diary, and then all of a sudden, just like I'll be full for the week with like one week's notice.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, right now I'm actually quite quiet, which is nice because it's been quite busy the last few months. So I don't really have anything to shout out in terms of gigs wise. But who knows?
Cool.
Who knows?
Yeah. I think that's the cool thing about being a musician in a way, is that you do, you're not consistently doing one thing. It's always different stuff.
Yeah.
And that's how I like it. Cool. Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure, Marcus, and thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, George. Yeah, it was a real nice conversation. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Great. All the best.
And you, mate. Bye.